Oh, wait, let me stop that. I didn't hit the do sound too. Sorry about that. And we do
I
have a
guess
video in there. Let's do
that song's going to
this.
be in my head all night long.
All right. Good evening. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes. Oh, yes, we can. Uh-huh.
Can everything looks good? Perfect. So welcome to the last class of financial literacy. Let's just go ahead and jump in. On tonight's agenda, we are really kind of bringing everything together that we have been working on for the last 4 weeks, but we're going to focus on behavioral economics, the budget, and cash flow. And we are going to take some time to be able to work on our budgets tonight. Again, if you can be on camera, that's great. The more you interact with us, also even better. And if you need a break or feel like you need to step away for any reason, go ahead and do that. Feel comfortable doing that. Okay, so first up, just thinking about investing and growing your money. And the ways that we are kind of focusing on doing that, right, is knowing and healing your relationship with money. Get a total financial clarity. And we've been able to, or I hope that the steps that we've given you by looking at your credit report, tracking all of your bills, and all of your finances have given you a really good financial picture of where you are. And hopefully, we've set some goals, right? So you have a clear financial vision of what you would like to do, and you've got some SMART goals in place to help you get there. Four, spending your money aligned with your values. And we talked about that. I believe that was in class one, where we tried to look at the things that we value most and see if that is aligning with how we are spending our money. And then automatically saving money monthly. And even in this time where we know it can be very hard to save something as little as $25, but just paying yourself first is going to be important. And that's kind of what a savings is, and looking at it like that. Okay, so the concept of behavioral economics is a way to decode like human decision making. So people are more afraid of losing than they are eager to win, if that kind of makes sense. We feel the pain of losing something more intensely than the pleasure of maybe gaining something of equal value. And that's kind of what oh gosh, sorry, I didn't do that. There we go. So an example of that would be if I gave you $100, or you can flip a coin and get $200 for heads and lose $100 on tails. Behavioral economics kind of tells us sometimes that we are often overconfident in our own abilities. But just thinking about that, if I gave you the option of I'll give you $100, or you can flip a coin and get 200 for heads, or lose $100 for tails, what option would you take? Throw a one in the chat if you would just go with the $100, or if you would take the chances flipping the coin. Go ahead and throw a two in the chat.
Are you able to see the
So
chat?
I'm not really.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you.
So we've got two ones and a two and another one. So three ones.
So it's
I,
sounding
I
like
also am a one.
most people would not take the chance. They're just going to take the $100. So I guess part of saying that is, behavioral economic, or maybe is it just kind of like the time we're not really willing to take any chances. But behavioral economics says that we're a little overconfident in that ability and might want to take the chance. Another example would be a small business owner of let's say a successful shop feels like they can't fail if they want to open in a new location, and maybe don't do enough research and just kind of jump into that could be seen as like part of that behavioral economics, being a little overconfident because they're doing good in one location, but maybe that other location might not be their customer base. They might not get enough foot traffic. So also, I'm sorry, we got that. Okay. And we're more likely to pursue short-term benefits over long-term benefits. So, for instance, we may put off saving for an emergency fund or retirement, even though we know that it's coming up sooner rather than later. The better off we are kind of financially, it's usually easier to save. But in other words, as humans, we are kind of adverse to loss, overconfident, and struggle a little with self-control. So here's another kind of thing to think about. So think about this scenario when we're thinking of sunk cost fallacy. Uh, this would be like a friend offering you free tickets to go to a concert you really want to go to, but it's raining outside. What the sunk cost fallacy tells us is that we're more likely to say no to the free tickets than if we had bought the tickets ourselves and worked and spent our own money on it. So the value of the ticket is the same, but because we bought the ticket ourselves and, had to go to work or whatever we needed to do to pay for that, we are more likely to go and deal with the pain of the rain because of the work that we put into that. So the sunk cost fallacy is that we're reluctant to give something up if we've invested in it, even if giving up is much more beneficial. It's kind of like throwing away or throwing good money after the bad kind of thing. Has anybody ever had any experience with that? The sunk cost fallacy, or is this the first time you're hearing about that?
I had a little bit of experience with that. So, my both my children actually were really into gymnastics when they were little. And I spent a ton of money on classes. And one day my kid came to me and said, "You know what? I don't want to be doing this anymore." And my feeling was, "But I've already spent all this money on it. Shouldn't you want to continue to want to take these classes?" And the response was, "No, I don't want to take these classes anymore." And I realized it was like throwing good money after bad money. They didn't want to do it anymore. They weren't going to get anything out of it. So because I'd already spent the money, I didn't want to stop.
I've also been in the situation where I'm very happy when my kids want to stop doing something, but also know that the investment that there is, but driving to the practices and keeping up with everything is kind of like, whew, yeah, I'm glad you're kind of done with that. But I also understand that too. Okay. So, what we do, or what do we do if our psychology is kind of working against us making good financial decisions? Well, we kind of give ourselves like a non-coercive kind of like a push or a nudge. So, for instance, if we make fruit easily available and at eye level at schools and the lunch line, kids are more likely to grab the fruit. And if we make the choices that are healthier very visible, they will make healthier choices. So we didn't have to ban junk food if, for that to be a nudge or a push that the direction that they went into, right? It's not a punishment. We just gave them what we would call a nudge, like a healthier option, and made that healthier option easier for them to get. So what is like a financial nudge that some of you have, or maybe you didn't even think of it as a nudge, but what are some things that you do to make financial decisions a little bit easier for you? I know auto pay is a pretty big one. If you are like just automatically saying, hey, I'm saving this amount of money every month, and before you even see it, it automatically comes out and goes into your savings account, is a pretty good nudge that a lot of people can use for savings. Are there any other nudges that people are doing now that would be helpful to just share with the group? And you can throw it in the chat.
I have one. Um, I struggled a lot with just auto paying something over to savings. So, um, it might be kind of cheesy, but if y'all have been on TikTok, there's this savings binder where you do like one, $2, $3, whatever the little pouch says. And so I
Yes.
broke that bad boy out, and it's working for me, so I'm gonna go with it. And
So not corny at all. I totally got one for me and one for each of my kids. And it's like whenever they can put some money into it, I'm always I and it's like very visible and I it's yeah, I think that's a really great nudge. I use it too and it definitely works. Has anybody ever tried using like prepay or cash? Cash is another one for me too. If I'm wanting to be set on like a certain budget, especially if I'm like traveling or something, it's so easy to like swipe your card. But having cash is always a kind of like pump the brake. I hate to break a 20, and I definitely hurts my heart to have to break $100 bill. So I'm always very like, ooh, let me double check what I'm spending or making sure it's worth it if I have cash. Because I feel like swiping your card is so much easier, or at least for me it is.
Or tapping your phone. Oh my God.
Ooh, I
I know.
know. I've hooked it up to my watch too, and I always think of that as like the double-edged swords because it's great in emergencies if you've left your wallet behind or whatever the case may be, you have it, but it also gives you more access.
There are two nudges that I think about financially, and one is one that I mentioned last week, which is this idea that if a company has a 401k and you have to opt in to the 401k, that's a problem because that's a barrier. But if instead of opting in, the company makes you opt out of the 401k, then that's a way to subtly nudge somebody into making a financial decision that's a positive one. And then the other one I always think about is, those pictures that you see of sometimes it's like a thermometer or some sort of big drawing and you mark off the red for how far you've gone to save money towards something. That's an interesting nudge because that's a visual nudge, which 80% of us are visual people. So it helps you like visualize, oh, I have to save this much money for this particular goal. And that's another nudge. It's not punitive at all. It's just a way to kind of push you in the right direction.
I don't know if there was anything in the chat. Okay, so biases and budgeting. I also let's really kind of take into account that anytime I feel like going outside just costs $60 at this point. It used to be 20, but just to like walk outside and exist, gas, I feel like the minute they start charging for air, we're really going to feel it. And I say that to say is that a lot of places are designed to part us from our money, right? Even if you think of just the grocery store, they are really incorporating all five of your senses to get you to kind of like spend, right? Even that checkout counter, the way it smells, the baker usually being right by the entrance, it's the music, it's all very inviting for us to kind of spend our money. Um, so budgeting and really kind of tapping into like how you value money, how you work is really going to be able to help you. So now that let's kind of take this theory to the more practical spaces and how does bias impact the way that we spend and think about those impulse purchases or when is the last time you made an impulse purchase? Put how many, like how long it's been, throw it in the chat. And I'm trying to think as I even say this, the last like impulse purchase that I've had. And did you make the purchase and did you feel guilty about it later? Did you return it or did you keep it? Because I kind of teeter on both sometimes. But anyway, so impulse purchase, right? We may be more influenced by immediate desires or the ease of assessing a product rather than considering its long-term value or affordability. A big thing that kind of triggers me that I really too, and I think we'll talk about this later, but sale. If it's on sale and it's something that I use, I'm like, ooh, let me grab this deal real quick. That's such an impulse because I'll have three of them in the cabinet. I have like this mindset of, ooh, stock up, but that gets me in trouble. So for instance, if we see someone sees like a flashy advertisement for a product they desire, they may be more likely to make an impulse purchase without really thinking it through because it's something that they want and they're going to get it. It's right in front of them, right? Without kind of like valuing or evaluating their budget and any constraints or alternative or thinking now, like, what do I want now versus what do I want later? Discounts and sales and limited time offers Discounts, I am a sales sucker for. I feel so good if I felt like I got this for a good, like I brag about, ooh, I only got it for $15 too. I feel so special about that. But when we perceive a sense of like scarcity or urgency, we make that purchase simply because we think it's a deal and it's going to go on sale again, but that sale really does something to me emotionally to make me feel like, oh, I need to get this right now. And so sometimes I don't always carefully consider it, but what really kind of like chaps my ass is that I'll get home and it's like I literally have four of something that I've stocked up, but I bought it because it was on sale and I just went with it. Or peer influence. If we see our friends or coworkers or acquaintances making certain purchases or engaging in specific spending habits, we might do that. Like maybe not making our lunch to go to work because all of our coworkers go out and we go out. Or even I think sometimes on a deeper level of like, oh, I'm 42. All of my peers have a house. I want to have that. And some of those things can kind of creep into that too with peer influencing or influence. And then there's recency of expenses, which basically means that we tend to focus more on recent expenses rather than considering our overall budget. I was pretty guilty of like, I've paid off two cars. I remember the first time I paid the car off, like instead of like saving that money, I felt like I wanted to reward myself with that money. So I went and just was like, oh, I don't have this bill anymore. I got this extra money. I didn't even account for it in my budget. I just said extra money for me to play with. And I did that. So an example would be like, if you've made a large purchase or paid off a significant bill, you may feel like you have a little more disposable available income. And instead of budgeting that money back into or accounting for that money back into your budget in another way, you decided to spend the money in maybe a more fun way. And emotional spending. I don't know if anybody else has ever been through this, but me and a breakup, I'm going to travel or I'm going to buy some new clothes. That is like the go-to for me when it comes to emotional spending. If I've gone through a breakup, I feel like I need a trip and a new dress. And emotional events and experiences can have a strong impact on us and really dictate the way that we spend and things that we might spend our money on. So, yes, if someone has recently experienced a positive emotional event, such as like a promotion or a bonus, they may overestimate their financial capacities and make some larger or more riskier purchases. Or in the event of a breakup or something, you just don't even care about your financial plan and you're just spending. And it looks like, is there anything in the chat? I get the little pop up, but I know I'm just talking. Sorry.
Yeah, we definitely have some discussion going on in the chat. So let's see. Constantly, okay. We'll start with Elisa. I am constantly from checking to savings. Good for you on that. I do, Mignana, I do out of sight, out of mind, basically hiding the money from myself. Great. Um, I did mention that when you were talking about all of those techniques that businesses use to sell us items, I actually hope that everybody in this class becomes an expert in that because I want you all to sell as much as you can. And then let's
Oh,
see.
yeah.
Mignana, I definitely stay away from impulse sections in stores. With online shopping, yeah, that's a problem. Yeah,
Hands
that's
off.
now popular,
It's
right?
just, it's gonna happen.
Yeah. And then I said, so for me, Saleh and Clarence, they're my friends,
Oh,
right?
that's the first rack
Lisa,
I go to in the store.
that right to the very
I go straight,
bottom,
and then I work my way back.
that's
Yes,
exactly
to the
right.
regular price stuff.
Elisa says, I can't think of any impulse purchases, things they're already budgeted, which I'm very impressed with. That is not
Hey.
the truth for most people. Chato loves sales. I'm terrible with Costco impulse purchases. And Elisa definitely agrees with that. Increased vitamins and supplements. For me, it's like beauty products. It's like, oh, that's going to be the best lipstick. I never wear lipstick. Why on earth do I buy lipstick? Um,
I used to do that with
um,
heels and knowing I'm not
right.
gonna wear anything over 3 inches to save my life. I don't know why I
Right?
do
But oh, they look
this.
so cute.
What do?
Um, Yeah, I call it retail therapy. Elisa says a new hairstyle. Mignana says
Yes.
seasonal shopping. Yeah, seasonal
Hmm.
shopping gets me too. Yeah, the key is definitely to figure out how much of that you do, because when we're creating the budgets, we need to know how much to put in that line item for
Yeah.
impulse impulse purchases.
And maybe that's just the better route. And I don't do that of like, just add it and account for it in your budget. But then the reality is, just for me where I am, there's not a lot of extra in the budget at this point in time. Life is life and yeah. So, okay, budgeting, big part of tonight. So this is Tiffany Alashay, and I believe I said that right, also
That's
known
right.
as the Budgetnista, and she tells us that we should not think of your budget negatively. And I am very guilty of this. I've always, budget is like, oh, I hate to even hear the word. It's always so constricting. But think about it as your yes man, right? Like a way to tell yourself yes to the things that you do want. Your budget lets you spend without guilt. Since some people don't like the word budget, let's just think of it as like a spending plan. And I do kind of like that better in some ways. So, does anybody else think of budget in any negative form or in any negative way, or it's just like, ah, it is what it is? Throw a one in the chat if you've ever had any like negative kind of connotation around budget. Goals. So we're back to goals, and I know that that's been like a pretty big theme of this as well. We've looked at our values, and now we can use those values to create our goals. And I believe it was class 2 or 3, we did kind of look at some goals. And the first and most important thing is to know what your goals are and what you want. And I always think of this in places to like kind of get myself out of things if I'm going to be doing too much. What do I want now versus what do I want later? And looking at it, the instant gratification compared to the bigger picture of the goals that I want. And your goals are the motivators that will help you to create and stick to your budget. So your goals can be long term, short term, and just knowing what they are, having them written down and a plan for them can really help you stick to them. Should also include financial goals like paying off your debt, saving for retirement, saving for emergencies, and this lovely woman here is Scarlett Cochran, and she's the founder of One Big Happy Life, and it's a vision board that she has created to kind of help her stay on track. So this is the board she created in 2020, and at the time she hadn't written the book, but in February, or well, not this February, but she did. The book has been published since then, and it is available at the Multnomah County Library as well if anybody's interested in it. All right. So steps to our budget. So after we know why we're making these plans, which are your values, and where you want to go, which are your goals. Now it's time to get clear on where you are today. And we're going to create, or we're creating a personal balance sheet. There's like no blame, no shame, just the process. We really want to look at all the income that you have coming in, and we're going to take this in steps to build our budget. So let's start by looking at what money we do have coming in, and just throw a one in the chat if you know all of your sources of income and you have a pretty good grasp of that. And also, I think everybody has been able to look at their credit reports since the last class as well.
Y'all can come off mute too if you feel like answering without putting ones in the chat. Elisa
Sorry, there's
says
that too.
yes. Jennifer says yes. Monet says yes.
Awesome.
Rebecca also says, my budget feels like a set of rules I have to follow, and I hate rules.
Me too. It does. The spending plan sounds nicer.
Right. Yes, and Celine also does know all the different sources of income. Some of the income sources are hard to quantify because they're not like consistent. And those are the hardest ones to figure out how to put into your budget.
Yes. Okay. So we know our income. Often when we think about budgeting, we only think about what we're spending, but that's kind of half of the process, right? So sometimes when we need to figure out how to best balance the budget, it can be about how do I increase my income instead of only focusing on reducing spending. And I don't know about everyone else, but I think I'm at a point now where there's not much more I can reduce, right? there's not too many lavish things that I've still been able to hold on to as egg prices skyrocket and gas is out of control. So it kind of even, and I hate this part about like capitalism, like we have found a way to try to even turn some of our creative passions into hustles, and we're always trying to find ways to make more money just to kind of survive, or at least I feel that way sometimes. So thinking sometimes instead of the shame of like, oh, I need to reduce or I need to do that is maybe the real gag is that it is increasing our income. And just kind of note, keep your business income and your business expenses and personal and all of those things separate. I hope everyone has a separate account for their business and a separate account for their personal at this point. Okay, so next step is expenses. Does everyone have a does everybody have a budget? And you can throw a one in the chat or come in and say yes, or even just throw a thumbs up on the screen works as well. Does everybody have like a current budget? And another question of that is, how often are you looking and going over your budget?
So Monet
Okay.
says yes. And I also want to, are these written
Sorry.
budgets? Do you actually have them written down? Monet says yes. Chato says yes. Jennifer says no. Elisa says yes. Always also looking at these subscriptions, right? Subscriptions are sneaky.
Ooh.
Mignana says yes, that she has a budget as well.
And then I'm gonna also add this other one, like, who was the first person that taught you how to budget? Because it wasn't well until adulthood. Who's the first person that even sat you down and taught you how to write a budget? I think I definitely was probably more so in my 20s, forced to take some kind of financial class or something in college, but it was not my parents. So it was if it's not second nature to for you to do it, that's understandable. I know a lot of our parents didn't really sit down and show us their own budgets. So, all right, now we want to get to that part of expenses. And there's a lot of ways that we can figure this out, and a lot of ways you should do this. Like if you can, looking at your monthly bank statements, going through that, collecting receipts, credit card statements, if you're using cash. There's a lot of kind of different ways to track it. But a good way to also think of I think we talked about this in the next slide, but a spending diary. Does anybody remember who still has checkbooks? And what do they call what is it, a ledger? I forget what they're called. I mean, I have checkbooks, but how are you tracking that spending throughout the month? What are you doing? And I
So
want to
there are
emphasize, oh, go
I was
ahead.
going to say, I just want to just point out what's in the chat, just because you'd asked the question about who taught you how to budget. Elisa says, my stepdad. Monet says that she goes over her budget every month to make sure that she doesn't overspend. I think that's
Okay.
amazing. We have some really good budgeters in this class, which is pretty unusual. Elisa says, when I was about 13, that's when her stepdad taught her, but she hated the idea. Jennifer says, it gets sadder. Nobody taught Jennifer how to do that. I've Googled, but for some reason, it always seems so daunting.
Mhm.
Mignana says, I feel like when I purchased a home, both and the Portland Housing Center,
Yes.
yes, helped me with their financial classes and just knowing about the SMART process. I love it. Chato says, monthly budget on Excel. Mignana, oh, and I budget my program at ERCO as a supervisor overseeing the budget. Mignana, that for me, that was also when I first learned how to formally budget was for my job. And I remember the guy who taught me how to budget, I was freaked out. I was like, this is a lot. How
Yeah.
do I know if my numbers are right? And he looked at me and he said, you know what? This is the thing. A budget is just a series of better and better guesses. So don't get freaked out. Just know that it's going to be wrong the first time you do it, guaranteed. In fact, it's always going to be wrong. It's just a matter of rinse and repeat. Just get it right eventually, and then it's going to change again. So don't beat yourself up for not knowing how to do it. Yeah, Mignana says so helpful. Thank you. All right, back to you.
Yeah, I know. I agree. Like numbers, and I don't know if this, for women, maybe it isn't. I don't think that growing up for me, math was never like pushed on me. They didn't really care. We got kind of that basic stuff, and numbers always seemed so scary, and it was always so acceptable to be a girl that wasn't good at math, that nobody said, and it really isn't that hard once you get into it, but it does look like so much when it's all these terms coming at you and all these things that no one ever taught you. So once you get into it, I guess it isn't as bad or it isn't as daunting as it actually feels. But starting anywhere is a good start. And then, too, Jennifer, if you want, we have some budget templates we can email you. There's a lot of resources for that too, as well, that are really good and a lot of different methods to help you with the budget. So, to get us back on track, I wanted to emphasize that tracking your expenses will not only let you know where your money is going, but it's also a really good early warning sign of identity theft and identity fraud. Again, just another quick shout out to, if you can, go ahead and lock and freeze your credit if you're not using it. No reason to let anybody else get a hold of it. So, for instance, you could find a charge on your statement that isn't yours, and that would be an alert to you sooner than any other way of like, oh, somebody might have gotten my stuff, or somebody has been able to steal from me, or something like that. Okay, a spending diary. What were those? What are the check? Is it like a ledger? I forget what that's called that you have in your checkbook. Uh, it's just like you write down all the transactions. Oh gosh. Anyways, it's kind of basically like this looks like. So a spending diary is very useful tool. If you can do it, it doesn't have to be pen and paper. It can definitely be digital as well. But it's just a tool to help you not only identify what you're spending your money on, but also where you may have leaks in your budget. So you track your purchases by date on how much you spent, why you made the purchase, and what method you used to pay for the item, whether that was your card, whether that was cash. And these are just going to be some insightful things for you to be able to track patterns and habits. A spending diary can help you identify your spending motivators. So, for instance, like, was this something you needed? Were you kind of like in crisis? Was it made it easier for you when you had cash? Or was it something you really loved? Or was it possibly just something you bought on a whim? The spending diary will be able to help you track that better. And as you go over your budget, being able to look at that, you can kind of really, one, assess, what your values are. Are you staying to those values? And are you on track with your spending? And so now we're going to think about a need, a love, or a want. So a need is a basic necessity. Love it or want it is something that helps you kind of enjoy or makes your life a little easier. I would always suggest that if you can, again, it can be digital. It does not have to be pen and paper, but track your spending for 2 weeks and you'll be able to get a really good, accurate number to add to your budget. Is anybody using any form of tracking right now?
When I created this form, I did it with my kid. I don't necessarily recommend doing that unless you want to have somebody that's going to make you accountable, because Veronica and I would go around, and every time I spent money on anything, I let Veronica write it down. And now Veronica, it's been years since we did this. And now Veronica, when we go shopping, will say, Mom, we just really don't need that. Thanks.
Okay, thank
I
you.
created a monster.
Yeah.
Monet says so Monet has a budget binder. Okay, that's great.
Oh, I love that. Okay, perfect. So, how can you track your spendings? Besides the spending diary, there's a lot of ways to track expenses. And the right way to do that is totally up to you and what works for you, what's the easiest for you to stay consistent with doing it. Some people like to use their credit union apps or their bank apps, which also have budgeting components. If you are, does anybody use their bank app for some of the services? Throw a thumbs up or one in the chat or something like that. If you are using that, your bank or your credit union does have a lot of resources. And if you haven't, get to know your banker. Um, Making a habit out of tracking your expenses will make the budgeting process easier. And over time, you'll just find that your spending guesses will get better and better. And here's just a few examples of ways to track your spending. So, like that infamous checkbook ledger that I keep talking about is on here. The envelope method is a good one. Is everybody familiar with the envelope method? Go ahead and throw a thumbs up if you are. But basically, in short, you would have envelopes for, let's say, gas, entertainment, food, groceries, whatever. And every month you would set aside, like, I'm going to spend 200 on entertainment, 200 on going out. And you would put that cash amount in an envelope. And anytime you went to go do that activity, you would take out that cash envelope and use it for that. So say you went out to dinner, it was $50. You take your taken out to dinner envelope, spend your 50. If you don't spend it all in that month, it stays in that envelope and it can kind of just be like a incentive of like a savings that at the end of the year you can put it all together if you want, or just have more for that particular category and get a treat eventually one day. There's spreadsheets, there's apps. Looking at your statements is also another good way.
Tanisha, do
And I
you
don't think I
still
got
use
any thumbs up. So
we got one yes in the chat. Do you still use the envelope method, Tanisha? Look at
I
you.
do. I have not. But I emptied it out because my kids just went to their dad's for the month, and I'm spending all my money on only me. So the envelopes is about to look a little bit different for the month of July. I'm gonna have fun, and I might be outside. You might see me outside this summer, even though I like notoriously don't leave my house. But I do have it, and I like it. It comes with if you can. I know it's like blurred out, but it kind of comes with a little tracking, and then the envelopes are plastic and I have them like labeled. I don't know if you can see that. It says clothing. This says food, all of those things. But in the month of July, it looks a little bit different because, and my oldest is turning 18 in a few weeks. So my budget is also about to look a little different because more money is going to be in my pocket. I told him, yeah, anyways, so that's another thing. I'm trying to come up with reasonable bills for him to pay. And I think so. Insurance is a reasonable bill for an 18-year-old young
Car
man
insurance?
because I am paying 450 for two cars and I'm going to need him to
Step it up.
help out with because I don't need to pay 450. Sorry about that, guys. Let's move on. So writing it down. Now that you've collected your income and a budget, it's time to write it all down. Does everybody have like a budget that they use? Or I can throw one in the chat. Or Suzanne, do you have
I
one
already
you
did.
can
So
throw?
I put the budget
Oh,
template in the chat. We're like thinking great minds here. Um, yeah, but just because we have that template, if you have a system that's
yes.
working for you right now, yeah, use that. But if you don't, so Jennifer, if you want to look at a nice little easy to use template, that one might be a good one for you.
All right. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. Find the method that works for you. And just like anything, it might take a few different tries, a few different methods before you nail something down. But once you find something that works for you, use it. Like Suzanne said, she threw one in the chat. It's pretty straightforward. It's in Excel, and there are a lot of good apps too. There's a lot of good apps that you can, I think Mint was one of them. And I know that we had shown a slide before with it, and maybe not in this class, but if you are using something digitally, pen and paper, a lot of ways to track and keep your budget. And then another thing is, be honest, even when we're writing it down, like just I think being honest with ourselves when we're making a spending plan is the best thing that we can do about our spending and to get right with our spending. So we want to work on budgeting a zero out budget. Is everybody familiar with the zero out budget? If you are, actually, if you're not, give me a thumbs up if you don't know what a zero out budget is.
Jennifer does not know.
Awesome. Okay. So basically, a zero out budget, in other words, is you want every dollar that comes in to be accounted for in your budget. And that's every dollar. So when you're writing your budget, after you've put in all your bills, if there's like, let's say $300 left, you want to budget that money. You just want to, whatever category you happen to budget it in is how you choose to do that. But at the end of your budget, it should say zero. And that money should be, every dollar should be going somewhere that you have budgeted and accounted for, and you know where it's going. So any money you don't spend should be added to savings, retirement, emergency funding, goals, debt, debt reduction, or fun, right? Nobody's saying not to have fun. And then I was going to touch on the envelope technique, but we just talked about that. And then obviously, always, always, always most important is live within your means. But does that make more sense, Jennifer, on what a zero out budget is? And I can show you, like at some point we can work on a budget together and you can see where we do the zero out as well.
I don't. Do we talk about, and I don't know if we do or not, the notion of when you spend stuff, most of us don't spend the exact same amount of money every single month. And that's what can make budgeting a little bit complicated. So like, for instance, some of us tend to buy a lot of Christmas gifts. And that's going to cost us, let's say, $1,200 at the end of the year. So the question then becomes, well, if I'm working on a monthly budget, what is that going to look like when it's all spent in November or December? And the answer is you take the total amount of money that you would spend in a year and you divide it by the number of months. So I happen to pick 1,200 because that 1,200 divided by 12 is very easy. So that way you would actually in your budget have $100 specifically for Christmas shopping. And that can get complicated. The other thing where it would be complicated is if you're dealing with like school year, like you might have a completely different budget, right? A completely different budget when the kids are in school versus when the kids are at home. And it really is a matter of averaging out over time. That's the way most people budget. That does not mean it's the way you have to budget. If you're really good and you have a different budget for July than you have for December, great. But that's very complicated. So it's easier if you just balance out your expenses over time. It's also easier if you're balancing out your income over time. And that can even get more complicated, especially for small business owners who are not going to be making the same amount of money every month because many small businesses tend to have seasonal fluctuations. So what you want to do is average out. Okay, so this month might be a summer month and I'm going to be making $10,000, but I know I'm not going to be making squat in February. So you want to be able to think in the long term to make it over a year. And then that way you can make sure that you're personally working on your own cash flow so that when times are lean, you have money from those times when things were really flush. So that's the tough part. I know when I've been working with budgets with people, it's hard to wrap your brain around that notion of averaging everything out over monthly periods of time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, and that was this slide. We were going to talk about that, and I was going to say, with my daughter's tuition, Suzanne actually really got me right on that one. I pay, and it kind of varies, but me and her father split it, and it's about a little less than $600 a month, but it is only 10 months out of the year. But I was paying it 10 months out of the year instead of thinking of it as 12 months and saving for it. And again, in those 2 months, I'd be like, ooh, I got a little extra money and I would be spending it. But now what I'm doing, I mean, it's smarter. It's not as much fun in those 2 months, but I average it out for the year. And it has helped because sometimes that tuition hits and I'm just like, oh my gosh. Oh, she better be a doctor. I'm so serious. Okay, so
Bill.
being able to, and actually, let me go back to that. That was basically this slide. Analyzing your budget will give you some of those aha moments to say, hey, oh, I'm spending money in this way, and it might be smarter to do it in this way. Or even I'm getting coffee all changes that can save you some money at some points. And to really analyze your spending habits to be able to move into the next slide of refining it, right? So budgeting is about making your best guesses. Things change, things, but it is our best guess of what happened last month, what we know is coming in, and what we've seen historically in our lives of how things have been going when it comes to our budget. So once you've analyzed your budget, you can see where charge or where changes can be made on spending or where the leaks are or where you can increase your income or what you do need to be able to manage your lifestyle. So I'll talk about this in a second, but first, I kind of want to give a tip that this tip that kind of goes against American culture because we're very close-lipped about money, but sharing your budget. We just kind of even seen that regularly sharing your budget with little ones if you have them or they don't even have to be your kids but where you can pass on that financial knowledge really is key because like so many of us we didn't get it. We don't we are taught that it's like rude to talk about money, but that's also how people are getting paid less for the same job because we don't talk about incomes, right? How will we find these things out if we're not talking about money? I think one of the greatest like injustices kind of done to us is not being something that we are required to learn in school at age appropriate levels, starting in elementary school until we graduate high school of how to manage how to manage your finances. So whenever you do feel comfortable, talk about your budget, share your budget, teach people about the things that you do know. And I share my budget with my kids on a regular basis. And even now, like I said, so my daughter is 17, she'll be a senior next year. My son is just graduating, but he's going to be staying home. I now feel like, no, they're not going to be paying bills and paying rent, but you have responsibility. And I've been showing them the budget, but now we need to every month, we're budgeting together as a family because it's not all, I feel like I didn't get that. And it would have been so helpful as a young person being kind of let free in life to know how to budget.
I'm wondering, so with the people in this class, how many of you guys knew, come off mic if you did, knew how much money your parents were making? Did you know how much money your parents made? I
No,
I
I
knew.
I never did. If I can comment to that, I would definitely agree because growing up, I always associated money to be something negative because it was always bills are due or we're past
Mhm.
due. We got to come up with money some way. And I was never brought up with associating money in a positive way. Oh, like we got to save for this. We got to, get house. It was never a positive. It was always a negative. So it wasn't until I became older where I'm like, let me create a budget. Let me share this with my daughter. Let me share it with my family. So totally understand this. Yeah.
I love that. That's really great. Chato?
Sure.
So I wanted to I wanted to share this experience with a client on my business. So I worked with this family like 5 years ago, and they don't know anything about budgeting or credit. So I start helping them to create a budget for her, the mom, and her son. After that, they really, really, start doing that, building credit, and start saving money. Now, 5 years later, they have three properties. Just to
Mhm.
let you know the power of budget. Yes.
That's exactly
Because
right.
once somebody shows you, it really does, it really is just a lack of knowledge. And I think too, we get good at things because somebody has taught us or we have learned the hard way, where we have completely fallen all the way flat and we've had to learn how to pick ourselves up. And that makes us disciplined as well. But every lesson shouldn't have to be so hard, especially financial ones when we could just be giving the knowledge very early on. And it is we're at break time, but I think I'm a little ahead. I wanted to make sure I
Yeah,
didn't get us
yeah, you're okay right now.
over. So we have a lot of time.
Yeah, we're good. So for years, my job was to literally create budgets with people and go over, what their spending habits are, what their income habits were. And there were a couple of things that ended up being sort of the slippery guys, the things that are on your budget, maybe, but maybe you don't have the exact accurate numbers. The first one is the most obvious one, which is food. People spend a lot more money on going out to eat than they realize. That's why those spending diaries can be extremely useful, because you can have an aha moment when you go, wow, I thought I was spending, $100 a week going out for food. And the next thing you know, it's actually closer to $200, maybe even more
Hmm.
than that. The other thing which happened a lot was people did not keep track of where they were giving money away. So, for instance, giving money to your children, giving money to your parents, giving money to your friends, giving money to your friends' kids, keeping track of those gifts that we buy without really thinking about it. I have noticed in this community, which is where we did all this budgeting, is that uh, most of the people I worked with were very, very generous. I think that's a great thing. I don't think that's a negative thing, but just so long as that's part of your values, which is what we talked about at the beginning. If one of your values is to give back, is to give to community, is to give to family, then that's fine. The only point is we need to know how much you're doing that. The other one would be tithing, which is interesting because a lot of people tithe, but they don't necessarily do a good job of keeping track of how much money they are tithing. And that can pretty greatly impact. One of the other things I wanted to say is when you don't have a lot of money, you tend to be much better at budgeting. You're really kind of aware of where you're not going to have the funding. Um, I think the goal of this is to get to a place where you don't have surprises come up and bite you that are going to greatly impact things like, okay, my car just broke down. I have to have money in order to have that emergency fund when my car breaks down because I still have to get to work. Or um, or something along those lines where you're prepared for knowing when December comes that you're going to have that $1,200 and you're not going to go into debt, because the goal is to be able to spend within the means that you have at that moment, not putting stuff on credit cards unless you can pay for it at the end of the month. So that's the big goal of budgeting. I know after the break we're going to talk about like the specifics of how to do this. Um, what would be good is if anyone like is interested in potentially sharing a budget that they have. And then the other one is if you guys, we have a unique group here because usually when we have this class, we do not have anybody that has created a budget. And there's already more than 50% of the people in this room that have. If you guys have apps that are working for you, or if you would like to share that, that would also be very useful for the whole class. So it's basically 7 o'clock right now. Tanisha, how much of a break would you like to have?
I was actually going to touch on one of those things where you talked about
Mm,
generosity of I don't want to say poor people, but I want to say that I think a lot of it is to some emotional things in that and some behavioral things in that. When I was in the military, especially overseas, people will bag your groceries and it's usually like, kids, their parents are in the service. But the people that tip the best are the enlisted that make the least amount of money. The officers that make the most amount of money are so known for being cheap. Even when we go out to restaurants and tipping culture, and I think some of us feel guilty and kind of give this money in ways that we're there's some emotion tied to that and we don't always account for that. And you're right, I never think about like, oh, I just gave this little kid $5. And we just kind of give the shirt off our backs sometimes and don't always think about the emotional spend. Has anybody else kind of ever felt that where you're like tipping and you're doing these things that you're like, oh, because I feel like we often know that rich people are the cheapest, even especially when
it's
they
true.
don't even pay their taxes. So they don't tip, but we are the ones that feel bad when people are like, you're not tipping 20%. No, I ain't tipping 20%. I'm trying to survive. So there was that. But
Yeah, folks in the chat are agreeing with you on this.
yeah,
So.
people be like called up, like the emotional piece behind that. I think even and I'm not religious and I don't want to offend anybody with that, even with tithing, how we are getting people that don't have a lot giving the most, and it really hurts us more than it helps us sometimes.
Yeah. I just realized there are two other spending pieces that were slippery that people didn't often account for. One of them was household items. Like
Yes.
I bought a pillow, I bought a lamp, I bought,
Mhm.
something for my house that isn't a normal purchase. So you don't know how much to put into your budget. And then the other one that's difficult is clothing, knowing like, because you're not going to buy, $100 pair of shoes every month. You might buy $100 pair of shoes once a year, or if you're really into shoes, more than that. Or, coats, especially if you're working with your kids, well, yeah, but I only buy my kid a coat once a year. But if that coat was $75 and you've got three kids, you've got $350 that you got to figure out how to budget for. So thinking about those odd things that you don't purchase regularly. Yeah.
The envelope method is good for that.
Yeah.
$25 a month, just kind of throw it in the envelope. School year hits, school clothes shopping, here we go. And let's say what maybe a 7 minute break.
Sure.
Come
7:08.
back 7:08,
Yeah.
7:09. I can
7:09. We're going to come back at 7:09.
okay,
All right, you
7:09.
guys. All right. We'll see you at 7:09.
Awesome. Oh, perfect. Back right in time. How's everybody doing? Let's get to the next slide. Did it? Okay, did not. There we go. Perfect. So some money saving tips. And during this next like two slides, please feel free to throw any tips in the chat or speak up and say them. But we're just going to go over a few money saving tips that we use and that other classes have given us. So we would always love to add to the list. The first one up is the library. How many people, give me a thumbs up if you have your a local library card, and if you actually know the options that the library gives you for free. Nobody has a library card?
Come
Oh,
on, y'all. I know you do.
I'm so
Yeah, we got
sad about
Bianca
this.
does, Elisa does.
Right.
I use the
Any,
library for everything I can possibly use the library
and they're
for.
always adding new services
Um,
and actually going into the library. The librarians, I mean, they're like human chat GPTs, right? They can help you with so much research, resources. You'd be so surprised at how tapped in they are with counting resources. But the biggest one that I use is the Libby app. I totally got rid of my Audible subscription. And if you work it right, you can always have a book or two to listen to or to read. I also think that I get kind of caught up too. Yeah, I know. I get kind of caught up because I get tapped into other libraries that I follow on uh TikTok, and like the LA County Library offers so many things more than ours, and I'll come over and try and see like tool libraries, free classes. There's all kind of things that the library has. They even have two different streaming services that are free that you can use. One is sheesh, why am I blinking right now? Because I have it downloaded. There's two streaming apps that the library has, and that's decent stuff. You can watch kind of like, I wouldn't say that they have newer movies or it's going to rival your Netflix or Hulu, but there are apps. I think one is Hoopla and the other is
Canopy.
Canopy. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so
Awesome.
I literally just typed in the search Molt, and it came up with
Oh, it's listening.
Multnomah County Library free streaming services. Like
Yes.
that was what popped up. They are
They
so
are so
listening.
listening. They're so listening. Right to privacy gone. Okay,
Yeah.
so another tip, cleaning. I have really, really gone back to like some old school ways with cleaning, and I just buy like four kind of staple products. I get the biggest thing of Dawn dish soap you can get, and I save all my little scrubbing bubble squirt guns and just put water and Dawn dish soap in them. Bleach is, it will kill every germ that you need to kill. Vinegar, baking soda, pine salt, just some really old school kind of cleaning things that go a long way and will save you some money instead of if you're buying a ton of cleaning products and different things, right? Like vinegar is a really great replacement for Windex. Unclogging a drain you can do with baking soda. I mean, depending on how bad the clog is, but baking soda and vinegar is another good way to unclog, and deodorizes a lot of things as well. What is anybody using for cleaning supplies? Is anybody else like making any of their own, doing any of those like old school, old lives, any of that?
I use the same stuff you're using. The other one that I'm using, and you have to be careful with this because sometimes you can go overboard and maybe damage stuff, but is boiling water. You have a clogged drain. Be careful with your toilets on this one, I've heard. I've never
Oh,
had a problem with it, but I unclog almost all my drains with vinegar, baking soda, and boiling
and hot
water.
water.
Even
Yep.
the big ones, yeah. Let's
Mm-hmm.
see, we got okay. Jennifer says fabulous vinegar and bleach. Elisa says bleach, Dawn, and baking soda. Yeah, I've heard that actually that is a really good combination because Dawn is very
Mm.
inexpensive.
Yeah. And
Fabuloso.
super
I don't
gentle.
know Fabuloso.
I know that
Um,
one.
and
Like
Pine
pine salt
Sol.
kind of. Yep.
Coke cleans toilets. I have
Yes.
seen this on TikTok.
Yeah.
So Elisa says I mix Fabuloso with Pine Sol. Okay, Fabuloso, I need to
Mm.
figure out what this is because this is new.
They have it at the
Um,
dollar store too,
oh, interesting. Okay.
which is like a dollar
Vinegar.
75 now.
Yeah. Okay. So vinegar, lime juice, make a
Mm.
good, or lemon juice make good all-purpose cleaners. Yeah, that's true. The other one that I like to do is, those really expensive plug-in like Glade things.
Hmm.
So I have discovered that you can pull the bottom of that off and just put essential oils in it.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
oh my gosh, and they last much longer than the other stuff does because I know that whatever they're giving us is definitely
It's
watered
not.
down,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, reuse it all the time. I actually went to Costco about a month ago and they were giving out free ones, just the plug-in
Mm.
piece. I'm like, yeah,
I'll take
I know
that.
what I get. I'll take it.
And
Uh,
then, oh,
yeah, it was nice.
and then
Yeah.
there's insurance, like we talked about the change or psychology of changes. Hey, getting some quotes. Don't just stay with them. Shop around, see if you can save some money anywhere that you might be able to find it. And they do bank on us kind of getting comfortable and not looking around and not going with other companies. Same with the, well, I don't know if you know if you even have a lot of options with cable, but shop around. I do know that streaming services, I think on like Black Friday, will offer $1 a month type of thing. If you buy it in advance, there's deals like that to go around. And then, of course, there's also buy less stuff. But what that also can look like is there's a lot of free like things that you can if you're checking out Craigslist, what's the other one?
Buy
Oh, not
nothing.
overs. Yeah, buy nothing, marketplace, and it's not overstock. What's the other one? OfferUp. Uh,
Offer up.
check out their free stuff first, right? And there are a lot of pages where just within your local community, you could be bartering, swapping, things like that. I know a lot of neighborhoods will have a Facebook page doing those things too. If you're not tapped into your neighborhood Facebook page, it's a good way to find out free stuff, what people are giving away. And then when is the last time you actually looked at all of the subscriptions that you're paying for and who knows the total amount of dollars that they pay every month for all of their subscriptions? Throw it in the chat or feel free to let us know now. I know that I pay about $130 just in like business subscriptions, not even like streaming or anything.
The
I
streaming
should
stuff
check
really
it.
catches up with you because you're like, oh, well, gosh, there's
It's
this
not
one show I
inexpensive
really
anymore.
like, and it's
Yeah,
only on. And the next thing you know, you're spending $30 a month
might as
on
well go back to cable.
go back to cable. Well, yeah. And it's kind of a bummer because there are a lot of times where it's like, oh, gosh, I can't watch a show because I can't get it on the service that I have.
Hmm.
But the other thing that I figured out is it makes a lot more sense to purchase a one-time showing or the right to watch a
Yeah.
movie if it's going to cost you $5.99, which is pretty common, rather than getting a subscription for that particular channel. Just think about purchasing a one-off because those subscriptions really add up.
And I have just gone back to buying physical media. The Goodwill has a really great selection of books and DVDs. I do have a DVD player. You can get one on Amazon for like $20. And I've been collecting up on DVDs because yeah, they're about to not get no more money from me. I'm just kind of frustrated with the way streaming services, they used to be really great. And now everybody having one, Paramount, HBO, what's the point? I
Peacock,
just,
yeah.
yeah, every single one. And does everybody know the amount that they're paying for subscriptions? I don't know if we even
Let's see if
circle back to that.
anybody tell me exactly how much money they spend on subscriptions? Did anyone do that math? That's the one that is the hardest to figure out.
Yeah, there's a bunch of little ones like the Microsoft storage. I'm always amazed at how much I'm paying for storage on a phone that's
Wow.
250 gigs. I don't understand,
Yeah,
but
that's
they
too
give me
much.
every single time. And then it's like $2, so you can't really be mad, but I am mad. I don't want to pay them for this.
Yeah, I have these. I do a lot of Patreon, like paying for
Mm,
artists to do whatever.
yeah.
It's like, wait, I've been paying for this Patreon now for like 3 years, and I've never once even like gone back and looked at what the artist was
Yes.
doing. Now that I'm still giving to them, but it's like,
However,
yeah.
yeah. And then planning ahead is also a great way to save money, right? So, for instance, if you know you're going to go out for dinner on Friday, you're less likely to go out and eat on Monday and Thursday. And if you know you're going to, have to buy your mother, let's say like a candle for her birthday or something, you find a great candle on sale 3 months before her birthday. So, like planning ahead, you can save yourself some money. Is there any money tips that other people are using that they want to share with us?
This is when we need your input. We literally, this list was very small when Tanisha and I started this class, and we have been since teaching it, we add more and more to it. So any suggestions you have on ways to save money will help all of us. Manana, but it's summer and the kids are home. So we are
That's
off our
true.
streaming budget for sure, and a whole lot cheaper than going out these days. That's true. That's very true. There's another piece on that, which is an interesting one. And this is one of those like 10 hard things that you can do to save money, also save the planet. One of them is don't buy a car. Now let's say you have a car, and you're like, okay, but this car is great, but I like to go to the mountains. And so I really need to have this 4-wheel drive or this Subaru or something like that. Then you have to ask yourself, how often do you go to the mountains? If this is something you do all the time, great, get yourself a Subaru. If not, you can rent a car significantly cheaper than buying a more expensive car. So get something that you don't over purchase your vehicle, basically. And if you can get away with not, one of
Mhm.
the best ways that I suggest for people to save money is ride a bicycle. Not only does that
Mm,
save you on gas, it saves you on gym memberships because you're getting a lot more
mhm.
exercise.
Fair enough.
Anyone
Okay,
else
so
have any suggestions? Though I want to have at least one good money saving suggestion. Somebody tell me something they do to save money. Does anybody actually use Buy Nothing PDX? I do. It's basically a Facebook page, and it is crazy cool. You go in and people are giving away stuff and really good stuff, right?
I was going to say something similar. I had someone recently move me into our house and
Mm.
he had some items and he told me we actually did a swap. I had a washer and dryer and he purchased the one that was in my house. I was in love with the one I already had. And he was like, well, he ended up giving me 3 beds. And he was
Oh,
like, yeah, I
yes.
get a lot. I know my daughter, she's only 9 and her bed levitates. Like it has a remote control and all that. And it's like a modern one. I'm like, wow.
Mhm.
But so I kind of got from him. And someone else told me one time when I was budgeting and saving, and he goes, go online and find some items that are free and just flip them and sell them. I know my grandmother's really big, especially this time of the year with sales, just garage
Yes.
sales. I know there's limits depending on neighborhoods, how many times you can do it, but that's pretty profitable. And then I don't know what's going on. I heard with canning right now that it's on pause. I know it was something that maybe was on the ballot or it was discussed, but that still is a thing. I know there's a lot of poverty and homeless people that also can, but I've always found that as a way to save extra income.
I know you're talking about recycling the
Yeah,
cans. I did.
sorry, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
and you
bottle
know what?
drop.
My mind went to like peaches and
Yeah,
and I don't
I
know
did do
why.
it first.
And I
Sorry.
was like really alarmed. But
And
I
then
saw something and I don't know the details, but something is going on with recycling.
yeah, I got mine
Huh.
on pause for now. But also, I just wanted to say, I met several people in my neighborhood, and I think it's so cool. What they do is they sell plants. So they literally just
Yes.
grow their plants and then they branch off and then they just have like a little plant sale. And I'm like, oh
Love
my
that.
gosh, I thought that was really unique.
Yeah, that is really dope. Oh man, I would love that. So that's a really great way to, I mean, and they're doing it together like almost like a little farmer's market, or plant. sale nursery thing. And that's kind of the other half of the equation is like, sure, we can find ways to save money, but then the other piece of that is making money, right? And we talked about passive income, I think at some point, or did we touch on passive income?
Not yet.
Oh,
That's
okay,
in
we
the
did.
money.
My bad.
Oh yeah, you know what we did? We talked about passive income and investing. That was one of the investing pieces we
Yes.
talked about.
Oh, yeah, duh. And that's just kind of a key way to like balance your budget. So is anybody making passive income at this point? Or do they have any passive income revenue streams? Suzanne, you do, right?
Do I?
Yeah.
Not
Or do you have any?
really. I mean, I have income that comes in through
Oh,
rent,
the rent, yeah.
but not really passive income.
Yeah.
Though I am working on that. I'm in the process right now of figuring out some wealth building opportunities, and what we're looking for specifically is stuff that is passive that we don't have to do much on. Oh, so I just looked up that piece on the changing of
Bottle drop.
bottle drop, and yeah, they're of course they're making it more difficult for people to,
Yeah.
yeah.
It came up on my FYP or on my, yeah, sorry guys, I live on TikTok, but it came up on my TikTok maybe about last week and it was in the news actually. I think there was a news story because something happened at a grocery store, I think, or one of the bottle drop locations, and I think were kind of upset about it and fighting it. But we also know about the gig economy, right? How many of you guys are participating in the gig economy? Uber, Lyft, Amazon deliveries, anybody out here doing that? And you can just do a thumbs up if you are
My
having
sister
any of
is.
those.
My
Okay.
sister does Uber Eats as some, a sort of a side hustle. And there were a couple of things to know. Jennifer also does notary work. The things to know about the gig economy is make sure your insurance is accurate, because your car insurance is not necessarily going to be covering you if you get into an accident while you are doing your gig economy, if it happens to be in your vehicle. Um, but here's the other piece, which was interesting. So my sister was doing Uber Eats during the winter, last winter, and fell and injured herself badly, like had to have major surgery. And Uber paid for all of it, including missed salary. So she didn't lose anything as far as her money goes. And they covered her hospital bill, they covered her surgery. So that was a piece I didn't realize was an option. So
Yeah, I
be
didn't know.
aware of the insurance, both positive and negative, I guess.
Yeah. I've seen that with insurance asking now when you're going to sign up, like, do you do any of the gig work? Are you doing that? Because I think that, yeah, like you said, it makes a difference with your insurance. What do you need to get more insurance for it or a specific
So
add-on?
often they will offer you, like if you go to work for Lyft or Uber, they will offer you the opportunity to get insurance through them. It's often free, like just you have to check the
Hmm.
box. And people think, oh, well, I already have insurance, so I don't need to check this box. It's like, yeah, you do. You need to check that box because you're not covered. I had a girlfriend of mine who was doing pizza delivery in her vehicle, and got into an accident, and her car was totaled. The good thing was this happened to be during COVID, when for some reason there was a carve out for pizza delivery. And so she ended up getting covered because of that COVID carve out. But that carve out doesn't exist anymore. So you just have to make sure you have
Mm.
the right insurance. Um,
Right.
there
Oh,
is
go ahead.
one gig piece that people don't know about. I actually know people who have done this, which is what's called juicing. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but you know all those little scooters that are around town?
Oh,
They need to
yes.
be charged. And so people literally go, late at night, they go and they pick them all up, put them in their car, take them home, charge them, and then they make money off of it. seems like a really hard way to make money, but I know people that do it because you make pretty good money.
Interesting. Yeah, I've thought about that one. Um, there's also the freelance work too. Is anybody familiar with Fiverr or Upwork, people per hour, or even what's the one I like to use? TaskRabbit is another one that's out there. Is anybody using any of those services, or have you ever, or even in your business, are you using those sites if you offer like some services that are product based, or not so much product based, but I guess service based really,
Mhm.
when you think about, well, they have products because you can get like marketing help on Upwork or whatever. You can find all kind of stuff on there, people to help you with. Um, Another great way of making money is to sell your stuff like Poshmark, Etsy, eBay, Bonanza. I think there's all kinds of things. The local consignment stores. I know we had one class where a lady, and it really was like, dang, that's really smart. She said every like Wednesday, she kind of looks around her place and is like, what can I sell? But she also says she buys things or gets free things kind of quite a bit. And every weekend, her goal is to make some money on Facebook Marketplace. So she lists some things, people pick it up, and she says she usually makes about $100 a weekend, just kind of selling stuff around her house. I always try to sell it first if I can, if I think I can make some money on it.
You use Poshmark, right?
I do. I like Poshmark. However, it can be tedious. The work can be tedious if you want to like sell a lot of things on there. But I've had a good amount of success like Facebook Marketplace and Poshmark. I usually have a space. Renting a room out is always helpful. If you have a extra car, you can put it on Turo. There's all kind of options and resources out there for bringing in like extra money. And then also something unique or babysitting, like walking people's dogs, house sitting, things like that. So there's all kind of little ways to make money. Is anybody have any money making tips for us they'd like to share?
Rebecca did mention that she did DoorDash in graduate school.
I like that. I did it a little bit driving. Okay. All right. So just share, well, if you'd like to, it'd be great. If anybody wanted to share some personal budget like success stories with just, I don't know, whether it be you, friends, classmates. And I know, oh, we didn't have Tatiana come, but I think she did talk about how her credit score went, or did she come?
Yeah,
Am I
we did that in
confused?
the credit class.
She came, right?
Yeah, well, she didn't come into class, but we did
Oh,
talk
we
about
showed
her
her.
credit score
Okay.
going up. Uh-huh. All right, so somebody that currently is budgeting, especially if you're doing monthly budgeting, how long have you been doing it, and what tips would you give for starting the budget? I generally find it's hard to take that first couple of steps where it's like, okay, even if you're using like YNAB or Mint, getting all of the data into the app can be a little complicated. So anybody have any tips for how they were able to start their budgeting journey?
Well, for me, for my monthly journey or budgeting journey, should I say, I had to sit down. I'm pen and paper. I have to do everything pen and paper in a book. Because for me, taking that time to do that, then I know I'm going to do it versus being on the app. I don't know. For me, I have to have pen and paper. So I literally just sat down and was like, what are my spending habits? What's my, I guess you could say my four walls that I need to pay monthly, and what am I spending that I don't really need? So just going through that process, and I would just do it on a line piece of paper at first and just go through it. I'm like, okay, I can get rid of that. I can get rid of this, so it took some time, took a couple of years, kind of narrow it down to just, okay, this is my budget every month and I need to try to stick to it. So that's how I started.
So what do you think made the biggest, like, what was the thing that was sort of either the biggest shock or the thing that made the biggest difference in your spending habits?
I think the biggest shock is just noticing that I just swipe my card for any little thing, like, oh yeah, let me just swipe, and then noticing like, oh man, did I really spend that much? You know, it adds up. It adds
It
up a
does.
lot. So I guess just creating that budget and having the cash. I have to, well, here's the thing. I actually created like 4 accounts in my bank. So one's for bills, that's strictly the bills come out of, and the other one's my personal spending. Um, and then like I have another one for my savings, which is in my high yield savings account. So by me doing that, I know automatically that this is my account for my bills. This is what's going to be taken out. And I give myself a little cushion just in case, but that's it. Don't spend in that account. And then I have my personal account where I know this is all that I get to use for any other little things.
That is so smart. That is
Thank
really
you.
there is one thing I want to point out because what Monet said is really important. A lot of us, this is one of those brain science pieces. The act of typing and the act of handwriting are very different places in your brain. So it actually is very useful for you. So especially the first time you're starting this, if you don't know how to budget, handwriting actually will engage a part of your brain that typing does not. So that was a really great piece of advice. Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank
I did
you.
notice Celine says that she made money for dog and cat sitting.
Hmm,
Um, and she would upsell dog treats. Oh, very
I
clever.
like that. Well, entrepreneur you. I see
Yeah, right.
that. Yeah. And then cash flow. So as small business owners, we think a lot about cash flow, right? And have methods in place to account for lean cash times. What are some ways you can smooth out personal cash flow? Some of the ways to smooth that out is equal pay is a good help. I don't know if anybody is using it on their utilities, but that is always helpful for me. And just
What is
being able
equal
to
pay?
average it. Oh, so I do it mostly with the utility companies, but after a while, they've calculated what your average monthly is, and you pay that equally every month instead of the fluctuating bill that you could have. So if you don't already have it, you can check in with the utility company, and you can even usually do it online and just sign up for equal pay. And I think I have gas and electric. I think my equal pay for my gas is like $80 or something, maybe 50, I don't know, something like that. But so much so that I haven't looked at in years and it just gets paid. But yeah, equal pay is a really great thing to have when it comes to the utilities. A line of credit, whether that be personal or through your business, is a really great way to eliminate like relying on credit cards with the higher interest rates and have kind of like a safety net, right? Having that line of credit. Does anybody have a line of credit, business or personal right now? And I mean, again, I always want to emphasize not to commingle your finances. Always key. And then knowing yourself, of course, knowing how you're going to spend your money, knowing what times of the year that you're either flushed or strapped. I feel like, Christmas time kind of hits us hard. Since holiday season is usually coming out of it. I think most of us are like, whoa, so that happened. And now I'm recovering. Unlike like a business kind of profit and loss, personal budgets are rarely like formalized. I mean, we rarely add cash flow into our personal budget, right? We just kind of think about income and not really much else but how those seasons kind of look, right? So this means you need to be intentional about knowing when do you spend more? When do you make more? When are you triggered? What are your values? And are they aligning up with your goals and your spending behavior? And the final idea here probably is probably the most important habit to nature, especially for small business owners, are people that rely on like a side hustle for income It's important to become very disciplined about putting away and saving your money, as well as paying down your debt with the money you have when things are flush, when you're up. This could also include when you make a high or unexpected sale, when you get your tax returns or a gift. It's just much easier to spend it because you have it, if you don't already have a plan for it. Okay, remember these from week one, and we talked about like knowing these things as a foundation to have a really good picture on your financial situation. And of the six things, and I can't remember where we were in week one, but where are you now in week four with do you know your relationship with money? Are you paying your bills on time? You know your credit score? Do you have an emergency savings? Do you know how to invest a little bit better, or at least where to start to get in investing? And I would always say, number one place is, hey, talk to your banker, right? They can help you, even if it's just to start. And having a financial plan. So now that we're here in week four and you're looking at these foundational things, where are you at? Do you feel like you gain more knowledge? Do you know these things now? And you can throw a one in the chat or a thumbs up if you know your score, or not so much score, but if you feel that you're in a place where you have a good idea and a firm grasp on these things.
Now, are there any of the things that you didn't do in week one that you currently are doing? Celine says yes, definitely.
Thanks, Phil. All right, and I'm gonna really hope this plays without too many previews. Okay, it didn't even play.
Yeah, we'll see if we actually get it.
Let me see
Who's
if I can
what
get
are we going to
it
get?
this way.
Was it Webix or something like that?
I think that did happen last time. Is it playing?
What if you
No,
can
we
create
don't.
your own
Yes,
website by saying, this is what I want? With
we can't
Wix,
see it
you
though.
can.
I know, and that's weird.
Okay,
So let
I
me
will look.
try to do this and see if this actually works. I think I'm just gonna see if I can do this. I don't know if I want to do that. All right. Okay, maybe not.
Wix, one platform.
Performing on the biggest stage in the world was just one step in my journey. Hi, I'm Ronnie, and I teach people.
The wealth gap for African American women is real. By the time black women retire, they have a poverty rate 5 times higher than that of white men and are half as likely to qualify for Social Security benefits as white women. Tiffany, the Budgetnisha Alicia, started the Live Richer Challenge to help women save more. Last year, 20,000 women participated internationally. Collectively, they saved over $4 million, paid off more than 500 grand in debt, and 1/3 of participants opened a new savings account. Tiffany, the author of the book, Live Richer Challenge, learn how to budget, save, and get out of debt, improve your credit, and invest in 22 days. She and I chatted yesterday about how she came up with the idea.
Well, it originated from my company, The Budgetnista. I started it really to help women get on track financially. And what I found was, so I would teach in person, and then I would post via social media, like finish teaching at the United Way or Prudential. And then women around the country started reaching out to me, asking me for more help. And so I thought, well, how can I take what I was doing in the classroom, how do I take that and share it virtually? And so the Live Richer Challenge was born.
What did you find to be the most consistent?
I think we are losing the internet.
Thing that these women were not doing.
They were not saving. And as a result of not saving, what that really meant was they were
save, so therefore I can't do it until probably.
They just didn't know where to start. They were afraid. They had never been taught anything else outside of what was taught at home, which was kind of like the scarcity mindset. And so I wanted to switch all of that around and show them that, one, you likely do have enough. Two, budgeting is not hard. And three, there is a community and a collective that will help you do so.
And you talked about these various financial challenges, and we talked about, of course, struggling to save, but also the whole idea of living paycheck to paycheck.
Yes. So paycheck to paycheck is something that the typical American, unfortunately, is living with. And what I wanted to teach the women that too is a basic financial issue. It starts with the budget. My father would say all roads lead to Rome. I don't know if you've ever heard that saying, right? And so all financial roads really lead to your budget. It's just a basic principle of you have to list everything you spend money on, how much it costs you a month, and how much you're spending a month versus how much you're saving a month or how much you're making a month. And that's a basic budget. And so once I taught the women that, they were up and running.
Poor credit score.
Yes, credit score is probably the #2 thing that women were asking for. But credit scores, the reason why people have poor credit scores is because they don't understand the components of a credit score. They think a credit score is just, well, I pay my bills on time, but there are other things that go into it. How long is your credit history? Do you have any inquiries, meaning how many credit cards have you opened in the last year or so? How much is your utilization rate? A utilization rate is just this. How much of your credit limit are you utilizing? Most people don't realize that anything over 30%, you are bringing down your score. So if you don't know the rules to the game, you're always going to lose the game, and that's what I found.
And it is a game.
Yes.
It is designed to screw you to pay higher interest rates.
No, definitely. And so, for example, a woman told me the other day, well, the credit card company told me that if I pay off my credit card in full every month, it's not good. That I should leave at least a little bit on. I'm like, of course they're going to tell you that because they want you to pay interest. So that's another game that credit card companies are playing, and they're not really being truthful. So really, to me, I feel like it's my job to teach the rules of the game so we can win too.
Okay.
All right.
All right, I'm sorry about that. I don't know why it didn't play, but
You're great.
got it. Okay, so did anybody want to share their budget?
Anyone want to share what they've done? If not, we have an example, but it's sort of more fun if we actually get to poke at somebody else. It doesn't have to be finished or anything. We can play with it. We've got 15 minutes. While somebody's thinking about whether they want to do that, I do want to point out two things that I neglected to mention, but I think are important. One of them is if you guys are in the process of trying to save for a down payment for whatever, a house, a car, a suggestion would be to ask your friends and family that normally purchase gifts for you for your birthday, for anniversaries, for Christmas, for holidays, to give you cash. Just say, hey, this year I'm saving money for a down payment. So if you were going to buy me a $50 gift, can you just give me $50? And it sounds really weird, but after the first time you do it, you will find that people actually want to help you because then they're invested in the fact that you're purchasing something larger. And then the second thing I wanted to mention is energy efficiency. This is a really easy way to save money. We think about it from time to time as far as like, oh, remember when, your mom and dad would tell you to turn your lights off. The thing is, it really does make a pretty big difference to, use electricity at the appropriate time. For instance, electricity is cheaper in the evening time. So if you're going to be doing your laundry or your dishes, it's better to do it overnight when electricity is a little cheaper. The other thing, and this is one people don't think about when we were talking about cleaning products, is we have this notion that we have to wash our clothes in hot water or warm water, and we don't. Most clothing washes just perfectly fine in cold water, and the amount of money that you will save in a year is quite remarkable. I actually did the math one time, and it's hundreds of dollars. So consider washing your clothes. Not all your clothes. I mean, your whites you want to do, or something you want to sanitize. Go ahead and use hot water, but you can get away with just cold water. That works too. Okay, now that was plenty of time. Anybody want to share theirs, or are we going to share ours? Oh. All right, Tanisha, we might have to bring up ours.
Okay, so this is kind of an old one. So this is the one I used from Portland Housing Center, and I really liked it. I got it when I was a client there and have always used it. And we can just look at some of this things that I could change the date. Let's say it's pretty much kind of current. So
Can you
my
increase the size? It's a little hard for us to see.
Oh, is it? Okay,
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
better?
that's much better. Thank you.
Okay, so what I did for it was put in my total like fixed income, the things that I know I'm going to get for sure, and that's I get VA disability as well as child support, and that comes to a total of $4,200 a month, right? And I put my debt payment here. So I have one credit card, $137 a month, but I am paying 52% for my living expenses, which to me is on the higher end, but it does have some things in there like my cell phone with Verizon is also my, what is it called? Internet as well. And I'm paying for two cell phones, so it's a little bit on the higher end. As you can see, I don't have groceries, eating out, or any of those things in there just yet. I don't have any personal items. I do pay, like I did put in here some of the subscriptions that I pay for. And this is that Capital One credit card. I pay $62, but I add a 52 principal only payment every month, and that's what the side off is here. These are those business expenses I was talking about. Tuition for my daughter, car note, sorry, all those things in here. But I still have $600 to play with for the rest of the month, right? And I need to zero out my budget. And realistically, do I have gas in there? I don't have gas. And let's just say that off tops is 150. But that will change for the month of July. I'm not driving my kids around anymore. So let's actually change that.
Is it gonna go up again
Oh my, no,
starting
because
in
my daughter's
September?
driving and heck no. My
So
daughter's driving.
she's paying for her own gas?
Yeah, she's got to get a summer job or she
Yeah.
can't drive. She's
Well,
gonna be on the bus.
yeah,
We're
you're
gonna
still
talk about this
driving, but
quite a
it's
bit.
reduced. That's good.
Yeah. So what I was paying was probably about $200 a month in gas. My daughter goes to school in Beaverton. Just driving from, I basically live in Vancouver. I'm by Delta Park. Just that drive alone, 5 days a week to pick her up from like sports really kills my gas tank. So actually, let's budget $100 because I like staying in the house. Groceries, I do. I really like it in my house. I try to get all of my mortgage worth every month and all of the utilities worth every month. So for me, for food, I could maybe go with 250. Well, I'm kind of guessing right now, but I'm gonna budget 250 for that. And then actually we shouldn't even say groceries. Why am I lying? I'm gonna eat out. Eat out for the whole month. And actually,
For $250, you are cheap.
yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I can get one big meal and eat it for the whole day.
No,
Yeah.
skinny people.
No, I don't think it's even that. I've done a lot of just kind of work around. I think the concept of how we eat has really been colonized too. So I
So
don't eat three
let
meals
me
a
give
day.
a tip to folks. The average person in Portland, Oregon pays $150 per person per month for groceries. So if you're trying to come up with a good stab in the dark right now, putting in $150 per person in your family is a good way to start. The other one I
Uh,
wanted to point out, which is another one that's complicated, is the water bill. How often do you get a water bill?
I just typically pay them $100 a month and I don't actually ever look at the bill because it
So
does throw
you've
me
got equal
off.
pay.
I
Yeah.
don't even think I have equal. I just give them $100 a month and call it a day.
Uh-huh.
I'm just not been turned off. So I do that. And then I guess it is a form of that. I didn't know that the water company actually did equal pay. Once
Well,
I moved in, I just did
you've
it.
created equal pay for them, even if they don't have the
Mhm.
program, you're doing it. The one thing to know, most people, your water bill does not come monthly. It usually will come every 3 months.
3 months.
So you need to make sure you divide it by 3 when you're calculating how much money you spend per month on your water bill.
Yeah, my kids, I guess don't realize that we pay for water, and I know that the bill can be on the high end. So now we still have $242 left to kind of budget. And so you get the gist of it, right? We would zero out this budget.
Do you have clothing? I see you have nothing in clothing. You need to add a
I
clothing.
don't. I kind of just left it here. Say I'll put $25 in my envelope for these things this month.
Now you have
7.
107.
Oh,
Travel. You're going to go on a trip, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah.
And where's my little travel savings here? Let's do 50. And I need to find somewhere to put $17.
Do you have like cosmetics, haircuts, anything like that?
That's in my personal care
Uh-huh.
right here,
Okay.
personal product. So
So your son is
I'm not
going to be paying for
going
his
to get my hair
haircuts?
done this month, or like I said, I'm pretty stocked up.
I don't know.
He's
You
an
just
adult
got a
now.
super
Yes,
cute little
he is
haircut.
paying for
I'm
his own
just,
stuff. I was. Oh, actually, I did it myself because
huh?
we're saving money. And at this
No.
point, I did. I actually cut my neck. So I took the scissors and just did this. But I'm saving $25 a month for that. No, I'm offloading my son's hair care to him. That is no longer a responsibility for me. I think, yeah, it's just time. It's time. I think I was paying a good amount for haircuts every month and my daughter to get her hair done, but he's of age now. $17, let's say, can go into.
Emergency savings. Oh no, you already have that. That's good.
I do, but let's make it 117.
That's good. And what's
And
your
now
what's your
we're
goal for
0.
your emergency savings?
Right now, I am actually, let me look. My goal earlier this year was to be at 15,000, and I'm on track.
Good job.
I'm on track, but I'd have to
And
check.
do you keep those like Monet does in separate accounts?
I do. I do have 2 different accounts. But I don't have a high yield savings account. I just have a regular savings account with USAA that I've been using and I just transferred over there. But the USAA account is not my main account because they don't have a local branch. So I like US Bank because I can go into there. And that is where I pay all my bills out of and stuff like that.
So the one thing you don't have that most people will have would be the because you have a set income for the rest of your life, basically. And does it go up? Does there a cost of living adjustment that goes with that as
Every
well?
year but it's yes, and it will continue to fluctuate because once the kids are done with college, you get a little bit of money for them, that will be gone. Actually, I just got a letter from them. Hey, we know your son will be 18 in 2 months. If he's not going, like, you need to send us proof that he's going to college. And I think it's like 100 extra bucks or something for a dependent. So that will change when they are out of college. Every year, you get like a cost of living allowance that goes up a little bit, actually. And I don't always know what it is,
So
but
are you putting money into a 401k or into an investment, retirement investment at all?
I am not doing that. No, ma'am.
So that's the thing to think about. Now, Tanisha's in a unique place because Tanisha has money set for the rest of her life because of her disability. But that is something that is not in this budget that should be in this budget, as far as like how you're going to save for retirement.
Yeah, apparently in 2025, effective in December of 2024, 2.5% based on the latest cost of living. So the COLA was adjusted for that. But it's barely like poverty lines.
Look at you being all good.
I know. So basically the way it breaks down is, you out of here, babe? You love it. Okay. Have fun with your dads. Sorry. Yeah, they're going to their dads for July. Bye. Yeah, so it's based off what your disability rating is, whether you have dependents, a spouse. So yeah, I fall into this category here.
Right.
And it just changes depending on, how many kids you have. You can see how it goes up and those things. And it is 7:57. It's our last class. I will not keep you guys much longer, but I definitely want to say our call to action is write down your budget. Go over it. And before you leave, or just opening it up to any questions, any last thoughts. Sorry to kind of cut that time short.
And Jennifer, if you want, so I leave to go pick up my kid from university at the beginning of next week. But if you have numbers that you want me to look at or questions on how to put your budget together, go ahead and email me and I will work with you on that because I have fun doing it. I think creating budgets it sounds nerdy as hell, but I really do enjoy doing it. So please feel free to email me. Any last questions? Anything at all? All right, so this is the big one. Please, if you haven't done a survey yet, please do it this time. It definitely helps us. This class has changed a lot over the time that Tanisha and I have been working on it. So you guys have a fabulous July. I will hopefully see you guys in August at a class. Remember, tomorrow is our networking event. We'd love to see you there. And anything else? Any other questions? All right, y'all. Thank you very, very much for spending the last month with us. All right,
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We really
Thank you.
enjoyed your class.
Oh, thanks, Manana.
Thanks.
Have a wonderful summer. Bye.
Yes, you too.